Nothing is more memorable in Clash of Clans than getting shredded by the most broken abomination ever. Like, remember the most balanced troop, the Lavaloon? Or the weakest troop of all time, the Disarmer? No, these were busted. Today, we're looking at the most broken event troops in Clash of Clans history. And hey, this list is ordered from least to most, but that isn't the point of the video. They were all OP, and I suck at rankings anyway, so don't focus on that too much. Starting off at number 8 is Mecha. Basically the super giant if it was good. No, I'm kidding. I'm not doing my boy like that. But there is a good reason why people compare them so much. Its base stats are like if someone took a super giant and just beefed it up. They have the same housing space, targeting, and both of them deal extra damage to walls. But the Mecha was much better at some stuff, like its movement and attack speed were twice as fast, or the fact that it does way more damage to walls. That, together with better HP and DPS, made it much more capable at higher town halls, which is where the super giant struggles. And you know, most players just train an entire army of this and it just sliced through everything. It was like those dang nematodes from SpongeBob.
Oh, dang nematodes.
No, but really, one of the most important factors when determining if something is OP or not is the spammability of it. My notes here are telling me that that's not a word, but I know it's a word, at least in Clash. Can you train an entire army of it and easily get a 3-star? For these, absolutely. They were like the perfect mix between giants and Root Riders. At number 7 is El Primo. Now, some of you will probably think I'm crazy for putting El Primo on top of the Mecha, because on paper, the stats aren't as good, but you gotta understand, when El Primo was in the game, bases were much simpler, and what El Primo was capable of was pretty wild for its time. So El Primo was introduced during the global launch of Brawl Stars, and he was most comparable to a Hog Rider at the time, but if we're talking about modern times, he was very similar to a Mecha because it targeted defenses, it was really fast, and it sliced through walls. At the time, there was nothing like this. People were still using wallbreakers like it was 2012. Meanwhile, it only took one Primo to one-shot a wall. This was unheard of. This was significantly better than Hog Riders because when troops and heroes would go in to clean up, they wouldn't get stuck on walls. Everything was much easier and faster. It was also a very versatile troop. People would bring them for queen walks or in combination with bowlers, which was a pretty popular combination due to how unstoppable it was. If El Primo was added into the game today, I don't think it would be considered OP due to how broken event troops are these days, but it will go down in history as one of the greatest of all time. It was also one of the earliest examples of how OP event troops can be. Moving on to number 6, we have the Witch Golem. This troop was available twice in 2023 and 2024, the latter being a little bit more powerful. But both times, it was completely outshined by the Lavaloon. However, the Witch Golem was one of the most powerful ground troops in recent years. Some called it the Ground Lavaloon. Nobody said that, it was just me. But it was that strong. Basically, the Witch Golem, as the name implies, was a golem mashed up with a witch. Comparing it to a golem, it had the same DPS and HP, but that's where the similarity stopped. For only 11 extra housing space, you got a ridiculous amount of extra damage and HP. It did more damage than a witch, it spawned over twice as much skeletons, it dealt nearly 1,000 damage when going down, and it spawned 4 big boys after that. As if all of that didn't sound like enough, these big boys, unlike the ones spawned from the Super Witch, had levels. So at max, its stats were 25% better than a regular. And yes, these crazy stats did translate to a pretty OP troop. The Witch Golem was a tank, a pretty chunky boy. With a combined HP of nearly 30,000 each, they survived most, if not all of the battle at times. Defenses could not handle all that combined HP making their way into the base, especially with all those skeletons spawning and heroes behind them. It was a walk in the park. It overwhelmed defenses and made any base an easy 3-star. It was like Go Wee Wee during its peak all over again. Down at number 5 is the Royal Ghost. Though not as spammable as others before it, the fact that it was banned from competitive clan war says everything you need to know about it. The Royal Ghost was essentially a P.E.K.K.A that could pass through walls with a third of the housing space, and it was invisible for the first 12 seconds. This meant that one Royal Ghost alone could take care of most buildings no matter where it was, as long as it was within those 12 seconds, and boy oh boy was it busted. Players would end up carrying over 30 of these and just sprinkle sprinkle them on buildings little by little. Yes, it was slow, but it was reliable. You knew that if you dropped a Royal Ghost on something, it was guaranteed that it would be destroyed. The Royal Ghost wasn't playing any games. The only downside with the Royal Ghost was their very low HP. Outside of those first 12 seconds, it didn't really survive long. It was a glass cannon. That's also another reason why they weren't spammed in groups. But hey, just because you couldn't spam them doesn't mean they weren't ridiculously OP. They were banned from Clan Wars for simply being too good. You could 3-star just about any base if you had the patience for it. And number 4 is the Broom Witch. Now, I know there was an ongoing debate whether Broom Witch or Mecha was more OP. It was like Team Edward or Jacob all over again. But generally, I saw that more people agreed on the Broom Witch being way more forgiving if you just wanted to spam them all and close the game. I mean, there wasn't really much to it. They did prefer Wizard Towers, which was a hurdle you had to get past, but it wasn't that big of a deal. You just had to spam 1 or 2 on the Wizard Towers and simply drop the rest. The base stats were slightly less than a dragon, but for the same housing space, the Broom Witches were faster and they spawned tons of spirits that dealt crazy damage because of their 4x multiplier on defenses. She was like a flying Yeti. If you did the math, each Broom Witch was capable of dealing over 5,000 damage, enough to take on just about any defense by herself. Now, I will say that the pre-June 2025 Eternal Tome was a huge help at securing that 3-star, so if it was today, I think it would be lower in this video, but you can say that about a lot of troops in this video, but yeah, I just thought I'd mention that. And now down at number 3 is Kane. Kane is very interesting because it wasn't like the usual spam and forget kind of troop. Instead, it was like being able to train a full-on hero, and its housing space aligns with this at 75. As far as mechanics and stats go, it had a similar DPS and HP as a Mecha, with the targeting of a wall wrecker. Its main target was the Town Hall, so it would beeline toward it, destroying everything on the way there. But that's not all. When destroyed, it would resummon itself in a rage state where it dealt more damage, moved faster, and had an aura around him that dealt 300 DPS, which was way more than a Titan and Lightning Boots. It was an absolute unit that could crush through everything. And because it went toward the Town Hall, it developed its own charge, often referred to as Kane charge, which was similar to the RC charge in a way that you had to deploy a ton of invisibility spells, but you'd be heading directly to the core of the base, and of course, this was very powerful. It straight up made any base hilariously easy, especially when paired with the Disarmer. Now, Kane was slightly nerfed about a week into its launch, but it wasn't anything more than a slap on the wrist. And number 2 is the Disarmer. This troop had a similar attack as the Valkyrie, where it would do area damage with the AI and mechanics of a Hog Rider, including jumping over walls. And when compared to a Super Valkyrie, her DPS was a bit higher, but with about double the HP. Right off the bat, these stats sound insane. And it was. The Disarmer was in fact a very powerful mixture of a Hog and Valkyrie. But it doesn't stop there. She had a special ability called Big Time, where she was enraged for the first 20 seconds and had to be knocked down 3 times. If this sounds wildly busted, you have no idea. Actually, I have no idea because I didn't even use the troop. I was just too busy. Anyway, yeah, it was busted. By the end of the battle, it wasn't uncommon to have almost, if not all of them, still up running around. It was completely overkill for the strength of defenses. Not to mention, people often paired these with Kane, and oh man, it was absolute chaos. About a week into her release, the Disarmer would get nerfed. One of the biggest single nerfs I've ever seen, reducing her HP, DPS, movement speed, and rage damage increase, and removing the ability to attack air units like the Minion Prince and defending Clan Castle. They basically disarmed her. Get it? Because, you know, disarm. Anyway, before the nerf, the Disarmer was considered the most OP event troop of all time. But even after the nerf, it was still very much broken. It almost made first place in this video. Now, before we get to number 1, I had a couple of honorable mentions, troops that everyone considered OP, but weren't quite as powerful or foolproof. Like the Giant Skeleton, it had similar damage to a Giant, but with about 2 to 3 times more HP. Even with its high housing space and slow attacks, people still considered it OP because it was tanky, enough to lead an army into the core, and then it dropped a big bomb. However, the bomb was a hit or miss. Oftentimes it would hit nothing. Then there's the cookie. I know some of you will hate me for not giving the old cookie a spot on the list, but in my opinion, I believe it took a bit more practice and reliance on other factors. The cookie was basically a really strong Valkyrie. Some say Valkyrie if she was good. And it could one-shot literally everything. I mean, its damage was hilariously high. Now, it could be spammed by itself, but it wasn't ideal. It went really well with the bag of Frostmites, which is what I believe made it very OP, even with its very low HP. I would say these things were really similar to the Royal Ghost in that they were glass cannons. But unlike the Royal Ghost, I don't think they were as good by themselves. And finally, at number 1, we have the OG Lavaloon, to no one's surprise. Now, even though the 2024 Lavaloon was still very OP, there has been nothing like the original Lavaloon from 2023, before all the nerfs and everything. So stat-wise, the Lavaloon was in between the Lava Hound and Balloon, not quite as much HP as a Lava Hound, and not as much damage as a Balloon. However, not only was it faster than a Balloon, it dealt 3 times more damage when destroyed than a Lava Hound. It spawned lava pups every time it attacked and after being defeated, and it continuously dropped bombs underneath it on the way to air defenses. For only 23 housing space, I think you basically had the Super Lava Hound. It was quite a tank and was capable of dealing some serious damage and spawn a crazy amount of lava pups. I mean, do you need that much? No, you did not. Now, ideally, the most common strategy was to lightning the air defenses first, like most air attacks out there, but I can tell you right now, that was completely unnecessary. I was that one guy just spamming them raw, and I still managed to 3-star literally every time. Matter of fact, you could probably do it blindfolded. There was no strategy. As long as you know how to touch a screen, you're good. Now, to no one's surprise, they were nerfed shortly after, but it didn't really have a major impact. And on its return in 2024, it was nearly just as OP and much stronger and foolproof than anything on this list in my opinion. But yeah, that wraps up this list and my terrible ranking. But hey, let me know down below which of these troops was your favorite. For me, it's gotta be the Witch Golem. It's a shame I didn't use it more because I was so focused on the Lavaloon like everybody else. But man, the Witch Golem was any ground lover's dream. Anyway, with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, but hey, before you go, YouTube thinks you'll like this next video, so why don't you check it out? As always, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace!